Sorry about that. You guys probably heard all my kitchen noises while was downstairs, and I didn't realize I had my speaker on.
No, we didn't hear you.
Good, thank you. Hi, Chair.
So if you were singing in the background, Counselor, we didn't hear you.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody.
We are live now, Chair. You're okay to start whenever.
Okay, let me just start by doing a head count. Welcome to this meeting, the September meeting of the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee. My name is Carl Gonson. I'm the chairman, and I'm saying this for the benefit not of the participants, because I see the only people are participating are the members of the committee, but I actually ran into somebody that watched this recording of a few months ago, so we're popular. Anyways, we have with us tonight volunteer members Bruce McKenzie, myself, Haley Pankhurst, Aaron Holko, and we have council members Dorothy Bothwell and David Sharp, and we also have from the our support staff from the clerk's department, Peter Ton, and I don't think Maria is. Yes, Maria's here. I think she's under Grimsby. And Sarah, you could introduce Olivia at the time that are items on the agenda. So based on my math, I think we have a quorum, so we're okay to go ahead. First item on the agenda is the disclosure. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Jordan has just joined us, and I didn't introduce him. And Mayor Jordan,
good evening, Carl. Hello, everyone.
I want to apologize for not copying you on some of my correspondence. I neglected to realize that you were an ex officio member of this committee. So I apologize for.
That's okay. Apology totally accepted.
So does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? I don't see any. So we'll proceed on with the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, additions, deletions? Can I just ask why this is on the agenda for my own interest?
Perhaps Peter, I don't know, are you able to respond to that?
Thank you through you, Chair. Sorry, what was the question? Why adoption of the agenda is on the agenda?
Yeah, it's like, for instance, if someone wanted to talk about something that's not on the agenda, does it mean if you approve this agenda, you're not allowed to talk about it at a later time during the meeting?
It's my understanding it's the opposite. If there's an item that you wanted to speak about, that you wanted to add to the agenda, you would do it under this section.
Oh, okay.
Or if you had an issue with the order of the agenda, this would be the opportunity to shift the order of the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Bothwell, seconded by Bruce McKenzie. All in favor? That carries. Then the fourth item on the agenda is the selection of vice.
Excuse me, Chair, may I interrupt? I just wondered if we could have the other members of the committee, like it's hard to tell if they're actually voting because Councillor Sharp and Aaron Holko are not visible on the screen. So I don't know if it makes it easier for knowing if they're present to be able to vote.
I'm working on it. I'm trying to turn it on. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay. And Councillor Sharp is there, I'm assuming. I just haven't, I didn't hear him vote on that.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, actually, Councillor Bothwell, I think you raise a good point. I think if you read the terms of reference, if you abstain from voting, it's deemed to be a no vote. So I think we all need to turn our picture on and raise our hands.
Through you, Chair, sorry to interrupt. If your camera isn't working, an oral vote is acceptable as well.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve the agenda, seconded by Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Next item on the agenda are the terms of reference, which are attached. And I think we should have a discussion on the.
Sorry,
terms of
Chair, there's a one item before that, item number 4.
Oh, yes, committee. Sorry, Sarah. Committee member update. I guess we've had 2 resignations. Perhaps, Sarah, you could, since the letters were addressed to you, perhaps you could report on that.
Sure. I did receive 2 resignations this week. One was from Chantal Kemp and the other, or sorry, Chantal Peck, and the other one was Christine Kemp. I'm mixing up their names. Both just due to some circumstances. Personally, they're not able to continue, so they have resigned from the committee effective immediately. So the committee could discuss, what the next step is if you want to fill the positions, sit on it for a little bit of time. That can be a discussion for the group. It does, just for everybody's benefit on this, it just adjusts our total membership number in terms of quorum. So that's how we proceed, but we could discuss how you want to address those 2 vacancies. Or you can wait to another time.
Okay, Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, please, and thank you for indulging me, Chair. We had other applicants when we advertised our last positions. I know some of them would like to be on the committee, and so it's a shame to turn applicants away and then leave positions vacant. So I would be in favor of filling the positions. Thanks.
Okay, my own opinion would be there are 10 members of the committee, and so we have 8 left. A quorum then, according to the terms of reference, would be 5. And I think that's cutting it pretty thin. So only if 3 people are absent, then we won't have a quorum. And we only meet once a month. And if this was July or August or September of next year, I would say leave it as is, but it's still a year and a month, I guess, from the end of our term. So I would be in favor of following Councillor Sharp's suggestion of looking at applicants that we had the last time around. Other thoughts? Bruce?
Thanks, Chair Carl. If that's a motion by Councillor Sharp, I would second it, and then we can.
Yeah, it was.
Discussions.
Yeah, I'll move it.
Chair, I don't know if you can see my hand up.
Sorry, I couldn't.
Okay. That's okay. I just thought before this motion is considered, could I speak to it?
Yes, please.
So I know that we have a selection committee policy for committee members that and a process that we would normally follow. And same with Heritage, we just had to replace some members on there, and we actually had to advertise and run a new process, even though we had previously quite a number of applicants that were also very highly qualified. And a new process was run in, a new selection committee based on that bylaw was struck. And And from there we recruited. So I know it saves time and energy to go back to the previous list, but in some cases that previous list can be 3 or 4 years old or whatever, and there could be additional members of the community who are now interested and are waiting for an opportunity to also to put their name forward. So I'm hesitant to move forward with just going back to the previous list of candidates from this, from the previous recruitment. And I think it's an opportunity to reach out to the broader community to seek additional applicants. That's my perspective. I mean, if the motion is on the floor, as Councillor Sharp has put it, and seconded by Bruce, and we have to vote on it, but I'm not comfortable with just going back to the previous list at this point. Sorry.
Bruce?
Carl, the question in my mind in relation to Councillor Bothwell's points is, was it not just recently we went through this process, or am I thinking of the active committee?
Bruce, I believe it was Aaron, because you were the last appointee. Was it July when you were appointed?
Yeah, just before the summer. Yeah.
Or was it
June? I think June.
June. So that would be 3 months ago.
Thank you, Bruce, for that. It's just, I think, I don't know if Sarah can maybe jump in on here as to whether or not we have to follow the selection committee policy when we have a vacancy, which is in that bylaw, or whether the committee has the option to do as Councillor Sharp is recommending. And I think we have to go back to that bylaw on how we appoint to the committees, just so that we're following a consistent process between committees. And I understand totally what Bruce is saying. The other thing, I think our new terms of reference says that our minimum composition is 7 members and a maximum of 11. So technically, I think we can operate with 7. That's just also, I'm just wondering if you could answer that. Thank you.
Sarah?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. Yes, the current terms of reference does say 7, so you could operate with that. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. I would need to consult the bylaw as well, Councillor and team, unless Peter happens to know offhand. There may be a window of time where you can refer back to an existing list. I'll have to look at that. I don't have that on hand, but I can certainly get back to you on that one. It might be good to look at both avenues. If that is an option, perhaps you go that way. And if not, do you want to proceed with applications, just so we kind of have both options? And I'm happy to communicate that back to all of you, unless Peter, you happen to know.
Peter?
Through you, Chair, I don't know. I was just looking at the procedure bylaw, but that explains the process for appointing members of the council to committees, I believe, not members of the public. So I'd have to find that bylaw for appointing citizens to committees. Sorry.
Well, can we make our decision in Mayor Jordan?
Just a further comment. I know we interviewed the applicants fairly recently, but I know that I have spoke to a couple other people that for whatever reason didn't realize that there were applications for Grimsby Green, and opening it up to the public again, I think might be probably the best way to do it, not to leave anyone out. They should have an opportunity. There's over a year left in this council's mandate, so it makes a lot of sense to run it through the normal way we do it. That's just my opinion, but thanks.
Well, can we make this decision in 2 steps then? Can we decide whether or not we want to replace the 2 people that resigned? It's my opinion, having just gone through a summer and gone through a couple of subcommittee meetings, and I know how hard it is to get people out. I just think that if we were only a committee of 8, it would be very difficult to get very many people out to these meetings, and to with all the other things that we have going on, I think it's important to have more replacements at this stage. That's just my own opinion. And then the second decision is, I think from what I hear, the two counselors on the committee feel that we have to follow the process. My question is, how long does that take? Can we have replacement members of the committee appointed and on our committee by October the 27th, which is our next meeting? Or do we have to advertise, spend money, interview? Does it have to go to council, come back to us? And is that going to take 2 or 3 months, or how long will that all take? Sarah?
Yeah, I can speak to that. That's helpful, Chair. So normally the posting would go up for a minimum of 2 weeks just to give due notice and make sure we do have a chance to communicate that appropriately. From there would be the selection committee. We would go through an interview process. We can do that relatively quickly as long as everybody's committed to doing that. And then the final step is it does go to council for approval. Again, we can try to do those tightly as we can. I don't know that it's realistic to do it within the next month meeting, just to be honest. We could try, but it probably more likely looking at for your November meeting.
Right. Can we pass a resolution that says that we replace the two people? We will follow the process if required and leave it at that. And then if the bylaw says we have to follow that process, we will. And if there's any leeway, we won't. No? Any thoughts on that process?
For you, Chair, I would think that's acceptable. I have a motion drafted here that I could read out if you like.
Yes, please.
So the first portion of the resolution will be that the committee accept the resignations of Christine Kemp and Chantel Peck, and that the committee requests staff to proceed with filling the vacancies using the existing pool of applicants if permitted.
Sarah?
Just for one point of clarification, even if we were to proceed using the existing, I think it would still need to go to council. So all of them do get approved by council, and so we would still have to do that one step,
Right.
as the other members did as well, right? So we would just need to at minimum do that step.
Anybody want to move the motion that Peter just read?
I'll move that. Dave Sharp.
Any seconders?
I'll move, Bruce, I'll move it, Carl, Chair Carl.
Seconded by Bruce. All in favor?
Aye.
One, two, three, 4,
Aye.
5. How many votes? We got 8, so that's a majority, 5 out of 8. So that carries. Right?
Yep.
Okay,
That's correct.
moving on then.
Chair, if I may interrupt, I apologize. There was an additional item, I think, under that section for the appointment of the vice chair.
Yes. So we have determined that we want a vice chair. And I have alerted all the members of the committee to that need. And if anybody is interested in filling that position, I would ask someone either to step forward or somebody to nominate somebody.
Chair Carl?
Bruce?
Yeah, at the last meeting, you asked for people to contact you. I did. If there is anybody else that did contact you, this would be a good time to discuss it. But the present member, have you heard from any other member?
No, I have not. So you are the only one that's prepared to stand for the position of vice chair. So I'll move that you be the vice chair. Chairman can make a motion, can't he? Can he? Peter?
For you, Chair, it's better for it to come from the floor from one of the members.
That's what I thought. That's why I wasn't saying anything.
I will put that motion to the floor, Peter.
Moved by Councillor Bothwell.
Yeah, I just wonder, just on a procedural matter, Peter, because the terms of reference that are before us don't have a vice chair in it at all, can we be electing a vice chair without it being in our terms of reference yet in the new draft that's in front of us?
Through you, Chair, I think it's prudent to have a vice chair just for the ease of, if the chair is not at the meeting, we'll have somebody readily available to step in. My suggestion would be to appoint the vice chair, and then when we get to the terms of reference, maybe we'll include an amendment to include that.
Thanks. I think it's important. I noticed that as an oversight and that we did need to include the vice chair in the terms of reference. So I just didn't know if it was proper protocol to appoint or nominate at this point before we've actually amended and passed an amended draft terms of reference. So, but I'm good with it. I'm good with moving that motion regardless, but as long as it follows proper procedure. Thanks, Peter.
Chair Carl, I'm happy to sit in the wings until the next
I got a better
item is approved.
No, Bruce, you're not getting out of this. I got a better idea. Let's move the appointment of the vice chair to after the approval of the draft terms of reference. Because then we can do the vote on the vice chair after the terms of reference have been voted on. What do you think?
I'm just waiting patiently for instructions.
What do you think,
Okay.
Chair? I think it requests to move that portion of the agenda. I don't know, Sarah, if we've got to do because we adopted the agenda. Now we want to move a portion of the agenda to after the terms of reference so that it kind of follows the proper process. Do we need like a majority to say, fine, we're all good with amending the agenda to move the vice chair appointment to after the terms of reference? What do you think? Peter
has his hand up, so I will let him comment on that.
Thank you. I would say that appointing the vice chair right now would probably be most appropriate. I think the terms of reference doesn't not permit, I hate the double negative, but that there can't be a vice chair. So I think it's appropriate now to appoint the vice chair, and then we'll just include the amendment when we get to the terms of reference, because I don't think there's anything preventing the committee from appointing a vice chair at this point.
Okay, so I have a motion. I need a seconder. Seconded by Aaron. All in favor, please raise your hand, and I need at least 5.
Aye.
That carries. I think that's the first time everybody put their hand up. Okay. Terms of reference, they are attached to your agenda. Initially, when I looked at them, I didn't think we were going to discuss them, but after reading them a second time, I think there's a few things in there that we need to discuss. So I don't know if Peter or Maria want to share a screen on that. What I suggest is we go through it page by page. I have some comments myself. I'll lead off by making a comment, and if you have anything to add, please do so. So on page 1, Peter, can we share that?
Yes, I'm just bringing that up now.
Okay. My question on page 1 is the definition of motion. And my question was, it says when a motion is adopted, it becomes a resolution. And my question was, adopted by who? Is that adopted by this committee, or is it adopted by the committee of the whole, or is it done by council?
Through you, Chair, in this context, I believe it is when it is approved by the committee, it is a resolution and it's recorded as a resolution in the minutes.
Any other questions by anyone on page 1? On page 2, Peter, you having problems sharing screen? At the
I am,
top,
Chair. I'm very close. I apologize.
at the top, it says the mandate of the committee is, and then it refers to the natural environment. Does that mean that we are not to address the built environment, which is likely to cause more problems than the natural environment? Does any member of staff have an answer? There it is. No, yeah, page 2.
Peter, I don't know if you want to comment to some of these, because I know it was written by, the revisions were made by clerk, and I just want to make sure that we're consistent, because I know that they're looking for consistency with all committees. So if you're able to respond to some of these, and I'll help you as best I can.
Through you, Chair. Sorry, I was busy getting the document up. Which page was it on that you're referencing?
First line on page 2. Enhancement of the natural environment. My question was, what about the built environment? It seems contradictory because elsewhere in the terms of reference, there is reference to development, which is the built environment. So I think it should say enhancement of the natural and built environment. Now, I'm not an environmental scientist, so Bruce, you're muted.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with you because if you look at, as an example, item 3 or III on the same page talks about green infrastructure strategy and trends, consumption of energy, non-renewable resources, and lower greenhouse gases, greenhouse emissions. So I expect that to be enhancement of the environment. The word natural should come out because the purpose of, from my recollection of this committee, from the original concept, was to cover both. And green infrastructure, I think, should be a major emphasis of this focus of this committee, and that has to do with the built environment.
Chair, may I speak?
Councillor Sharp.
So my preference would be to add natural and built environment rather than take out natural environment. I think to be specific, we are talking about both. Thank you.
Bruce?
I concur.
I concur. Any other comments?
I would move the amendment if we need an amendment to this.
Moved by Councillor Sharp.
Sorry, Chair, may I interrupt on procedural here? Just because, can we wait to move anything until we've done all the amendments? I have some other concerns with the document. So then we, as a whole, we can accept them or not accept them, because we wouldn't individually accept each amendment, I don't think.
what if you agree with one and you don't agree with another?
I think we do a straw kind of vote. So it's just, I
Okay.
would get a consensus from the group. And if the group has a concern with it, then we would have a further discussion, but I have no problem with that wording either. So I think as long as like a straw vote that everybody just kind of shakes their head and said, yeah, we're good with it, then I think we just move on to the next correction or change.
Okay,
That would just be my thought, because it just might go quicker that way.
okay, I don't have a problem with that, and I would like to move along, so let's try that. Elsewhere on that same page, does anybody have any other comments on page 2? Seeing none, I just would like to highlight in 5, the authority of the committee. I've had some members of the committee ask me what they have the authority to do. What does the committee have the authority to do? And I think this sets out exactly what we can and we cannot do, and what we have to go to council to get approval for. So our role is to provide advice and make recommendations to committee of the whole. We can consider and provide advice and recommendations on any matter submitted to us by council resolution. We don't have the authority to direct staff, and we do not have the authority to obligate the town to any financial obligations. And in fact, we do not have a budget. I just wanted to highlight, I don't have any comments on that. So if there's no other comments on page 2, I want to go to page 3. And I noted that on my, yeah, there it is, my copy and your copy, that the second paragraph is highlighted in yellow. And I didn't do that. And I just wondered, does anybody know why it is highlighted? Peter?
Through you, Chair, I do not know why. No, sorry. This document was created before my time, unfortunately. So, but I think if the committee agrees with it, I can remove the highlights.
Any other questions? Sarah?
My assumption would be, and it is just an assumption, that when they go through revisions, I'll sometimes highlight them for review, and maybe that's happened and it just didn't get unhighlighted. I don't know that for sure, but my guess is it would be, I don't think it was intended to be highlighted other than maybe the people working on the document. But
Okay. Can we turn to page 4? Any comments on page 4?
Right, Chair, I don't know if you can see my hand with the screen sharing.
I can't.
Okay.
I'm trying to get a view where
I know it's hard. I know it's hard.
where I can see everybody, but there isn't a view.
So
You're just going to have to speak up. Go ahead, Councillor Bothwell.
my apologies. I just wanted to mention that again, I was following an HTML, not a PDF. It's hard for me to follow this PDF, but the town of Grimsby the member recruitment shall be completed in accordance with bylaw 1891. I think that's been replaced. Because that was, I might or might not be. That might be the current one. I'm not sure, but that's where Peter might just want to double check, because that's the one that I was talking about, the selection committee. I think it went through one revision, but that could be the correct bylaw. I just think it would be good if you could just double check that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, it's 30 years old.
Well, I think it was 2018.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
It's okay. And it was number 91, but I thought we did an amendment to that, but we might not. I'm pretty sure we did. So I'll leave it with Peter just to make sure we have the most current selection committee bylaw. Thank you. Number in there.
For you, Chair, it does appear just at a quick glance it was amended in 2019. I can just update this to say as amended.
How about put the correct number in? Because I think it was given a new number. Did it stay 1891?
Have a quick look here if you don't mind. Sorry, just a moment.
And maybe it did, and maybe it was just minute, but I don't know why I was thinking it might have got a new number.
Oh, no, yes, sorry, you're correct. It was repealed by 1963.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, turning to the next page, which is either page 5 of 7 or 7 of 9, take your pick. Can we fix that too, Peter? Anyways, on item 9, I just noticed that there is a requirement that says within the 4th quarter of each year, Grimsby Green will prepare a report to committee of the whole that summarizes the activities and accomplishments of the past year. I guess it's not too early to start thinking about that. I just noted it for interest's sakes. And then under 10, there's reference to the active Grimsby Advisory Committee. I think you meant the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee.
Yeah,
So
that would be correct.
can someone move that wording be changed? Well, I guess we're going to do, okay. So that's a note to be, or a change to be added to the resolution at the very end. Okay. Peter, you
Chair.
have to make a note of that.
Sorry, Chair. May I just ask to go back to the chair section, and Peter, can we incorporate the new wording for a vice chair in there as well? You might have to pull it from another terms of reference.
Right, it should probably fall directly after chair.
Yeah, and it would have it has the same kind of an appointment procedure. It's defined in other committees, so you should be able to find it.
There's a definition for vice chair on the first 2 pages, but if we have a procedure for electing them, that would be appropriate.
Yeah, that's right. There is a definition of vice chair.
Mm-hmm. But the procedure's not there, so
No.
yeah, the election procedure, so yeah. It's just kind of like the whole section's missing. So I think I would be good if we just have that you carry out the work. Well, I would take the wording, Peter, from Active Grimsby or from Heritage or from another, like we have a vice chair in Heritage. I would take the wording out of another terms of reference and put it in there so it's consistent from Active Grimsby or whichever other committee or GDAC or whichever ones have a vice chair, and put the same terminology into our terms. So like, I think we could, I don't know if everyone's okay with leaving it, and then Peter can come back with an amended version that actually carries the consistent role of the vice chair.
Sorry to interrupt through, Chair. I can look for that definition while we're working on this, and hopefully I can get that before we.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on that page? Any other member of the committee? On the next page under B, voting, I just wanted you to note the first paragraph under B, voting. It says, or abstain from voting. If a member abstains from voting, the vote is recorded as opposed. Now, I can't imagine myself being that strict in interpretation, but you never know what's going to happen in the future. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of that.
But through the chair, if the vote is not recorded, then it's just should be recorded as approved. As long if there's 5 members that vote for it, or if a quorum that votes for it, and the vote is not a recorded vote, then it's just a carried, and we don't record the number of in favor or opposed. So as long as we see a quorum voting in favor, then it's not recorded as who. So if a person forgets to put their hand up, they're not opposing it, unless it's a recorded vote, and then we ask each person individually. Just
Right,
for FYI.
Councillor Sharp, yeah, thanks for straightening me out. I agree. And then that brings us to the last page. I don't have any comments other than please note under 14 that there is no fixed budget for the committee. We have to rely on Sarah's good graces, I guess.
Sorry, Chair, if I can just comment, I know it's, I know although we don't have a budget, I think if we ended up getting a grant, Sarah, how is that handled? Because if members of the committee or whatever, are we able to apply? Are we able to have staff assist us with applying for grants? And then when we get that money, do we not get it as a budget for us, or does it go into the rec budget and then we have access to it, or how would that work? And can we even apply for grants as a committee?
My understanding would be that we, the staff would support you to do that, right? So it could go through the staff operating grant, and it would be with the support and, you know, participation of the committee, but it wouldn't be a grant under specifically the committee's name. It would probably be under the Town of Grimsby staff as well, how it would probably be done. And in terms of budget as well, we do have some resources. They're fairly limited to try to support some committee work or certain initiatives that sort of flow into, you know, the objectives of the department. So, you know, we'll work as best we can with you. They're not large pots of money, but hopefully we can find ways to do some things. Is that helpful?
It is. I just want to make sure we will not be restricted, because I know everyone, we've been reminded at council many times that we are just an advisory committee and we don't have any authority. So I just wanted to, you know, if this committee decided we wanted to apply for a grant, I just wanted to make sure that that would be an option that would be supported by staff, and that it falls under our terms of reference as something that we are able to do. And if not, maybe do we need to include something to that language just so that it's clear, and if council approves our terms of reference, to understand that we have the ability through the director of rec services and with the assistance of staff through rec services to apply for funding through a grant process.
So my understanding would be if something came along those lines and the committee wanted to recommend that staff apply for a grant, for example, that could be done. And then if that was, you know, passed through council as well, then staff could be directed to do that, because there's all these things always have another financial component to it, right? So that would undoubtedly be a part of that discussion as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Sarah, my question was, if the committee engages in fundraising for one of their activities, where does that money go? Does that result in the committee having a budget? If we did some fundraising of businesses or individuals in the town of Grimsby to plant trees, for instance, where does that money go? Does that money go to a budget that the committee is responsible for, or does it go into the overall budget coffers of the town?
We do have to be a bit careful with fundraising on some things, but my feeling on it, and I would probably have to check with a few others to make sure they agree, is that we would develop a bit of a project, define the scope of that, how we would manage those funds. And if it was agreeable to all, then it would probably flow through the town of Grimsby, as you are a committee of the town of Grimsby. We don't generally have committees managing their own bank accounts. That gets into a whole other set of circumstances. So it would flow through the town of Grimsby, and it would just need to be an approved program or project, would be how I understand it. I don't know if Peter, you have anything you want to add to that?
Are you sure? That's been my experience in previous committees as well.
Okay. So do we have a role for the vice chairman? Yeah. Peter? I
wasn't able to see any examples in other terms of reference. I've pulled this I think I've used it in the past, and it's essentially just to assume the responsibilities of the chair in their absence.
Looks pretty good to me. Any other comments? Okay, so I guess this is where we have the overall motion to approve the terms of reference as amended by the committee. Do
I
have
still
that
move here, Carl.
moved by Bruce? Is there a seconder? Aaron? All in favor? That carries. Okay. That brings us to item 6 on the agenda, the review of our priorities. I just wanted this to be on the agenda to sort of refresh our memory as to what our priorities are. Time is fleeting. We only have, I don't know if we're going to have a meeting in December. We're not probably going to have meetings next July, August. There's very few meetings left. And unless we have some ad hoc committee meetings sort of in between the overall committee meetings, we're going to be hard pressed to make a dent in our priorities. So Peter, I wonder if you could share the priorities. I know you have it somewhere because I saw it earlier tonight. And if we could have a look at that just to sort of refresh the memory of the committee, and also I guess Aaron and Henry are new members of the committee. Henry's not here, but.
Peter, I have the document if it's helpful. Oh, you've got it. Okay.
Okay. So as I recall,
so that's not the most,
no,
that's
no,
the
it's
draft.
not.
There was a finalized 2021, 2022. Do you want me to share it, Peter? Or do you have that?
If you don't mind sharing that, sorry, Sarah.
Yeah. Can everybody see that? I'll try to up it. Is that helpful?
I couldn't find this, Sarah. Where did you find it? Mine said draft on it, and then I know we had subsequent meetings at which time that we finalized some of this, but I never did see the final version of this.
So what I'll do is right after the meeting, I'll send this to everybody. So to everybody, make sure everybody has it in front of them. Is that helpful?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I think the 3 areas, the one on the left is tree planting and protection and naturalization of green space. And it does not differentiate between public space and private space. And it gives some activities that we decided we were going to do under brainstorming / actions. And indeed, we did set up an ad hoc committee consisting of, I think, about 4 people, one of which has resigned. And that group did meet, and they were talking about tree planting. We have not really scratched the surface on protection or naturalization of green space. And the item is on the agenda later on, so I'm not going to spend much time on this other than we need to get on with this. The second area that we felt was a high priority was community engagement, and as part of that, we formed a subcommittee to deal with acknowledgement of and recognition, I guess, recognition awards. And to do that, you have to engage your community first, I think. And we have to get out there and let the community know what we are doing. We have to let the community know what, or they have to tell us of people or businesses that are doing a good job so we can nominate people for awards. And I think that item, part of it at least, is on the agenda later under Green Acknowledgement Awards. And then the final a priority was litter removal and waste reduction. And we've done a little bit of that. We've participated in some cleanups, I understand. I don't think we have a group specifically looking after this area. So,
Chair.
Bruce, is that Bruce or is that Dave? I can't see. Dave?
That's Dave, sorry. With respect to the litter cleanup, and I know we've done it a couple times with the Friends of the 40. We clean up the 40 Mile Creek, and I'm sure we'll be planning something this fall. I will email the committee, and if anybody wants to volunteer or advertise, it doesn't require much planning. Like, often we'll just meet for an hour and a half or 2 hours with like 4 to 6 people, and we just kind of spread out and pick up garbage around the creek. So I'll let you guys know.
Okay. I think that there's enough work here to keep us busy for a long time. Is there any further discussion on the review of our priorities?
Chair, if I could ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Under brainstorming actions, in the first column, it says provide advice on related town bylaws and policies. And I just thought that it would be great to have a communication channel open between staff with respect to the updating of bylaws that is ongoing right now. And that kind of came to mind when the Clean Yards bylaw was brought to council. And I mentioned that it would be helpful for the Grimsby Green Committee to have had an opportunity to comment on that before it came to Committee of the Whole. So I think it'd be great if we can reach out to the CAO and just encourage that the channels on the review of any bylaws that impact our committee might have an opportunity to come to us just for review, as that is part of our priorities, is to provide advice on the bylaws, and a number of them are under review right now. Unfortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to speak to the Clean Yards bylaw, and that I think has already been passed and done. And in it did have a change with respect to the height of grass cutting by the town. And one of the things that was in our discussion on a previous agenda was, looking at the areas of public lands and how we manage them and how often we cut them, whatever. And we're not supposed to be directing or telling staff what to do, but understanding what the current policies are and having those discussions would really help as part of our mandate and our priorities. So Sarah, I don't know if there's a way to reach out to the CAO and staff just to, as they're looking at moving forward on amending or reviewing any bylaws that may impact Grimsby Green, that we have an option to maybe see those as those discussions evolve. Thank you.
To add to Councillor Bothwell's comments, I noted in reviewing the minutes, I think from June, there was an an idling bylaw that we were supposed to be commenting on, and I don't think we ever saw it. Would it fall under that same category, Councillor Bothwell?
Yeah, and I think it might still be up for review. I don't know, and maybe Peter or Sarah would know if that idling control bylaw is on the table. I don't know when it's going to come to us, but I don't think it has been reviewed yet. Thank you.
Okay. I can comment to both. What I can do is take away and ask the CAO and even clerks what the process might be to allow for comment to bylaws. I would need to get a bit of feedback from them, and I'm happy to bring that back in terms of what they suggest and how that process would go. As far as the idling bylaw goes, That was originally something that had been referred to Grimsby Green. However, in talking to staff, I do believe that the planning department is doing some work towards that. So that is where that has been referred to. And I think I did give that update to this committee. So I'm not sure what the timing and process will be, but it does seem that it's transferred to them for the time being. I can follow up as well, though, to see maybe where that is or what they're expecting to do.
Okay. So we've talked about this. Bruce?
Yeah,
sorry?
I have a question, Chair Carl, and I also have a point I'd like to make, if I may go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
First, my question relates to the bylaw, I think, on yards that Councillor Bothwell spoke about. Where within the staff structure of the town would that bylaw have originated, or the concept for its need be originated? Would that come from planning or public works or parks?
Sarah?
You did ask Councillor Bothwell. So Councillor Bothwell, if you want to answer it, you can, but my understanding was it was planning building bylaw. Do you agree? Yeah, I believe it was seen as sort of bylaw enforcement focused, and that was, I think, where that is where it came from. It did not come from our department, I can say that for sure. So it was planning building bylaw.
Through the chair,
Thank you.
I think that it was, I think they were trying to consolidate a graffiti bylaw and make it part of the clean yards bylaw. I think there was two bylaws that they just kind of consolidated, but I could be corrected.
Well, thank you for that information to the fellow committee members, and Sarah. That leads to my next point, in that the priorities that are listed in here in front of us today on the shared screen, I don't see really anything relating to built environment or green infrastructure. Later in the agenda, I note that an item agenda number 10 is an invitation to the Director of Planning for the town of Grimsby. I think at that time, there could be a healthy discussion about the coordination of, or no, I shouldn't say the coordination, but for information to come to this committee from the planning department as to what their priorities are. Because it's one thing that I have commented on and I have noticed since this committee has been going, and this is no reflection at all of the staff component, Sarah and her team, who've been working with this committee, but the planning department has been absent. And I think in the long run, many initiatives from the Green Committee have to direct or assist the planning and the bylaws and policies of the planning in this town. And I look forward to listening and receiving the information that we receive next month from the Director of Planning, because this may answer a lot of questions for us. Some of the things that we'd like to do, we may find out that they're already being instigated or considered. So thank you, Chair.
Sorry, if I may just interject, is it okay if I unshare the screen now? I know it's just easier to have a conversation when you can see everybody. Is it okay to take the priorities down?
I was going to ask for reaffirmation of these priorities before you take it down.
Okay.
But I was trying to find something to address Bruce's comments about development. I think it's covered in the somewhere in the terms of reference. I think we only get to comment on development when we're asked. I can't find it right now, but I did notice So we haven't been asked to comment on development. And I think that is a shortcoming, and I think Bruce is quite right. It's very important in looking at greening the community that we do look at development, but the terms of reference say we have to be asked, and we have not been asked. So, Bruce?
Chair, in my interpretation or reading of page 2 of our terms of reference, I don't see the need to be asked. I see that we are asked to cultivate community involvement and developing partnerships to do a number of things. And one of them is innovative green programs and responsible. And it goes on to say responsible environmental practices, recommending climate adaptations and green infrastructure strategies. How I read this document, it says that the town is looking for ideas to provide to council as to how these things can come along. So that's how I see it, Chair.
Bruce, yeah, I looked at clause IV, and it said provide feedback and reviewing studies, plans, development proposals, and other documents referred to the committee.
Oh, okay, I respect that, but I think that adds on to number 1, 2, and 3 above that.
Yeah, and maybe 1, 2, and 3 are contradictory to number 4. Does Sarah or does anybody know what the intent was, or should we wait until the planning director appears at our next meeting?
I think you're right. You could take different ways of interpreting it. It was created, quite some time ago, and obviously before this particular group is sitting here. I don't think the intention was that development specific pieces were coming through the committee automatically. It was, I think, as requested. That was my understanding of it. But we can ask further questions if you want and ask for additional clarification. I don't know if any other committee members or councillors have any additional comments.
Chair, I'd like to just make a comment. So I wonder if it's possible that we, the committee members, could be circulated on planning applications. And then we could bring them for discussion at our committee. And obviously we can't give any direction, but we can make recommendations. We could say, hey, listen, we've been circulated this planning application, and we recommend that a green roof might be, or maybe a permeable pavement structure, and then it's up to council or planning or whomever receives it, whether they take any of those recommendations. So we're not really directing or giving. We're only advising, which is kind of our mandate. So, and then we can appropriately have it circulated and discuss it as needed. I mean, these applications aren't constant, but there's one every other month, maybe every third month, sometimes 2 in a month. But it'd be nice if they could be circulated to the committee so that we can review them, and then we're prepared to discuss them at the committee, and then we can make recommendations. And again, they're only recommendations, so we're not really overstepping. We're just shooting things up to council, and council can say, hey, we never really thought about that, but we have a recommendation from our green committee. Or council can say, hey, you know what? We have a recommendation from our green committee, but it's just not feasible in this project for whatever reasons. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on that topic?
I think I see Aaron Holko's hand up. Aaron, are you waiting patiently on the sidelines there?
Yes, my question's not, it's about the committee priorities in terms of the terms of reference. So I'll wait until this specific conversation about the infrastructure is complete, and then I'll ask my question.
Can I dispense with the formalities? Since I can only seat 4 out of 8 people at any time anyways, and I'm missing people when they put up their hand, can people just interject? Is that
Chair-
okay with the committee? Do we have to be so formal?
It is with me, and I might suggest the shared screen can come down if you're ready for that, Chair. That will help solve some of our problems.
Okay, unless Aaron needed to. Aaron, do you need to see the shared screen?
I don't for my question, no. They can come
Okay,
down.
let's take it down then.
I'll unshare it. I could always put it back up if we need to.
Okay, let's take it down. Okay, now I can see all 12 people. Bruce.
Here, Carl, with respect to Councillor Sharp, I always considered that this committee would recommend policies such as aspects of green infrastructure, climate adaptations, and in brief, I can see where we suggest to the town to consider developing best practice climate adaptations for built infrastructure or buildings, and then leave it to the professional planning staff to develop those policies and score planning applications by them. I don't see it as a role of this committee, as we do not have the expertise to entertain individual planning applications. So that's how I view the role of the committee, is simply providing advice or requesting staff to develop and implement policies that show green initiatives in the town. And then the staff or the different departments would bring those policies back to the committee for review so that we could comment on the policy, not on an individual property. Thank you.
Other comments? Dorothy, sorry, Councillor Bothwell.
Okay. The official plan review. So I got to watch my train of thought. I lose it by the time I put my hand up and then I have to talk. The region's undergoing their official plan review, and we're going to have to come in conformity next year. And part of that will be zoning bylaw, and there'll be climate adaptation captured in there. I think it's really important that we become part of that process when Bruce talks about policy and oversight and basically the broader picture about development and what we want to see with, from that way. I think that's also an excellent opportunity for us to comment on the development of the official plan and the zoning bylaws with respect to what we see as how to, so how we can interact with that. And maybe the planning director can help us with that too. And early on, we can be a partner in those discussions with the review. So I think that will be a critical piece for identifying what developers are required to do, because if it's in the official plan, they have to do it. And if it's from the official plan, there's a section called the pre-consultation agreement and what's required in there. And the region has an MOU with the municipalities to develop that pre-consultation agreement, which says you shall do this, you shall do this, you need to have these reports, these studies, blah, blah, blah. So that pre-consultation document it talks about tree saving plans. It talks about all that. So part of the official plan review and the regional official plan review, and that I think we have an opportunity to contribute to that. I don't know, Sarah and the director of planning when she comes can probably help, but I think we need to be part of that discussion early on. And I hope that door can be put open and reached out to us.
Anyways, we have 3 people that are in favor of commenting on development applications. I'm also in favor of it. So any other comments? Do we know, does anybody have a suggestion as to how we would change the terms of reference to accomplish that? Sarah?
Chair, I wonder, I think it might be helpful to have a conversation with planning and then determine what the right path is. I do tend to agree with Bruce as well. I think the policy level is more where they would want the committee to reside rather than getting into specific applications, although there are avenues you can comment on them or see them, including our Let's Talk Grimsby page. Anytime there's an opportunity to comment and share, just for everybody's benefit, if you're interested in this sort of thing, that's a great page to share a lot of information about upcoming applications too, that you can weigh in on. But I think if we heard from planning and maybe heard what opportunities might be coming forward where there is an opportunity to share some comment, that might make us feel a little bit more comfortable as to where we can play a role and what would make sense. I just think otherwise we're a little bit guessing. That would be my suggestion, would be to hear from them and then maybe have further discussion based upon what they say.
But then what will we do with the terms of reference? They need to be changed at a later date if the words referred come out of here. I guess you could put something in that supersedes that. I think the word referred needs to come out of there. I don't. Any suggestions as to how we accomplish what at least some of us want to?
It's Dave Sharp here. I just had one comment that I think that we're kind of underestimating some of the committee members with their expertise or their limited expertise. Bruce McKenzie shared with me some information on different types of green techniques, green roof, different buffers for like water management, even just plantings that can be used to manage stormwater, rainwater. And then it goes into like further in detail of like types of drainage, right? Like you can do like a buried perforated pipe, right? To make water travel, but not make ground mucky. And these things, they're not really complex. But I'm also an engineering technologist, and I have some actual information on some of these techniques. And I know other members of our committee have some professional, but that's not important. There's still room for us to comment, and it doesn't mean we have to and that we will comment on every application. We might have some discussion on an application and say like, okay, well, we don't think there's any meaningful way for us to participate in this, and we may choose as the committee to only make recommendations when we think it's a meaningful thing. And I think we have, I think we know when to do that and when not to. But to the chair, I don't know how we would change the terms of reference. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just speak to that for a moment.
Sure.
I think we have to be cautious, and this is again going back to what Director Sweeney said, is I think we do need to listen to the planning director, because whatever recommendations we bring forward or whatever there's some like Councillor Sharp said, there's a wealth of really great suggestions and information about how to bring forward ideas with respect to green infrastructure and development. But unless those are formulated through the right channels, which might be, as I mentioned, like the pre-consultation agreement is a document that then within it will be outlines about the building form and the stormwater management and the infrastructure, and it'll the green element and climate change may end up being its own little package. And within it, the recommendations from Green Committee might say, these are check marks that a developer should in this development do and gets bonuses like Councillor Sharp was saying for doing that. The way to get those initiatives into planning and development, we have to do it through a planning process, and it's either through that you shall in the official plan or zoning bylaw, or through a pre-consultation agreement, which has a whole bunch of checklists about what planning says the developer has to consider. And within that envelope, there'll be all these little sub envelopes. So things like what our committee would recommend gets put into that. So I think rather than one-offs, and like if we try to take a development and say we really think green roof or whatever is good here, we can do that. But it's a one-off, and it isn't a policy level, and it isn't something the developer has to take seriously or do. We don't have any power at all, none. And unless we get it into a document that has power, like a pre-consultation agreement that they have to do, or they get a benefit by doing things that are in there, or through the official plan or zoning bylaw. If we don't put it in those channels, we don't have the tools, the teeth, and the strength that we need to move forward with the initiatives that are so good that we want to be recognized. And if we try to do them independently, I just don't think they'll stand. So I'm just suggesting we have to, I think we really do need to listen to what the planning director says, look at what avenues and roads we have to move forward with those great initiatives, where they best fit and how they can be put in where they can have teeth. And then look at our terms of like if we have to modify our terms of reference, it says it can be modified at any time. So I think, we say, hey, we want to add this section that gives us a little more clarity on how we handle our advice on that particular thing. So I'm just saying, I hear what Councillor Sharpen is saying. I just think I think we don't have to act on it now and make a decision tonight. I think we can sit back, wait for the director to speak, and then determine a path forward. That's all. Thank you.
And Councillor Bothwell, are you saying then that we would have to amend the terms of reference, or?
I don't even think we do. I don't even think we do. I think, like you said, we just need clarity on what our role is in the director of planning and what our relationship is, and how we communicate together and how we move forward recommendations that we want planning to have input on, and that, maybe we can have consideration for. So I think after that discussion, we'll know whether or not the framework we have in our terms of reference meets that. And if it doesn't, then we can certainly amend it and bring it back to council. It says it can be amended at any time, I think. So,
well, yeah, I guess I agree with you, but I also agree with Councillor Sharp. I think between Councillor Sharp, Bruce McKenzie, Haley, Aaron, and the mayor, I think there's a great deal of expertise in the field that we're commenting on. And I think we have as much expertise in some of that, equivalent to or better than staff. And you have to remember what you said, or what Dave said. All we're doing is providing advice. Nobody has to, we're not saying you have to take our advice. It's just one of many, many, many factors that you should consider. So it's not a it's not a life or death issue.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, we can contribute. I just say, I don't want to see a lot of effort put into reviewing an application or development, giving advice, and then it doesn't have any weight, or it isn't taken with this. I just think it's one way to do it, but another way to do it to get teeth into it and to actually be able to implement what we're asking people to do is to get it in those other tools. So you can do both ways. We can review them. We can say, here's our recommendation. It goes to the committee of the whole in a council endorsement package, which is like a month or two later. It might miss a meeting. That's the problem, where you might miss right now, those development applications have to be determined within 120 days. By the time we get them at committee of the whole, if we don't see them at this committee way early on in the process, by the time we get them at committee of the whole, it's already at the end of the 120 days. So I just worry that too, if we're going to contribute individually to developments, that there's a timing issue there too. And then how seriously is it taken? Because it has to go through committee of the whole, right? Before it goes anywhere as a council endorsement recommendation. So I just think there's two ways of looking at it. This is one, it's the short version. The longer version is looking at what differences can we make long-term in development policy. We can do them through those other channels. And I just think that those are the ways that we get the teeth into environmental protection and looking at what our priorities are and getting them implemented. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. Before I do, are there any other comments? Peter, I wonder if it's possible for you to read back to us our amendments, if you can remember them.
Sorry, Chair, I think Aaron was waiting.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron.
That's okay. I just didn't want to start a new topic about the priorities until we had finished that discussion. And honestly, I've lost my train of thought a little bit too, so bear with me. It's been mentioned a few times about how we're only an advisory committee, and I apologize if this was discussed before my involvement with the committee, but I'm trying to understand where our roles lie in terms of these subcommittees, these priorities. If we have all these action items that we want to do in terms of, say, for the awards or for the tree planting, but if our mandate is only to give advice, I'm confused at where our authority, which we don't have any of apparently. I'm trying to figure out where our roles lie and what's expected of us in terms of fulfilling these priorities. Is it purely advice, or are we going to be actually trying to do some of these actionable items that we've been discussing at some of the previous meetings and subcommittee meetings? So I'm just trying to understand better exactly what our role is in terms of our priorities and the terms of reference. I'm not sure who can answer that for me.
Well, I'll try. I'll try to answer that. Our role is to make recommendations to council, have them approved, and then some of them will be implemented by us. And before we make recommendations to council, we will do some research, consider alternatives, evaluate the alternatives, write up a report, bring it to this committee, and then have this committee approve those ideas. Those ideas then go to council, and then council says yay or nay, or they may modify what you recommend. And in that, our role isn't too different than staff. Staff has to do the same thing. They can't do anything without the approval of council unless they're specifically delegated to do by a delegation bylaw. For instance, I don't know what Grimsby's dollar amount is before they have to go to council for approval, but where I worked, I could spend up to $100,000 without council approval. It used to be like 5,000, and way back in the dark ages, it was probably $1,000 or nothing. So I guess our role isn't too dissimilar to staff. Would Sarah, Councillor Bothwell, or Sharp like to add to what I said? No? Nobody wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
I will. I've got some courage. I think that our role is mostly to give advice and make recommendations. We don't really have a lot of power or any, but we do have a role like in the community, right? So we can engage the community. We can say, for example, they've been doing these blitzes of like the recycle bins. And they've been leaving recycle bins behind. And I get a lot of messages about people that are saying, why did they leave my garbage or my recycle? And so we can do like an education campaign, teaching people about their recycling and how, and we don't need to really get advice as long as it's not a budget item. We can make through our volunteer efforts, we can make some infographic type of things, and we can post them on the website, and we can engage with people to teach them. I had an idea about making a game if we ever get back to having like festivals and stuff, where you'd get like a little kids pool and you'd fill it with like garbage and recycle items. And then you'd put the 3 bins out, and then you'd get kids to come and you'd say, hey, pick an item and tell me which bin it goes in. The kid would try, and their parent would be watching, and you would say, oh no, that doesn't go in there, that goes in here. And the parent from observing would be like, oh, that little thing isn't actually recyclable, that is garbage. Or they might learn, oh, that is recyclable. And so some of these kind of community engagement things are in our mandate, and like we don't need to go to ask permission to do them. But some of the policy things, and like we're not writing the policies, we can just make recommendations to them. So I think that there's kind of a little bit of both. For the most part, we just give advice, and but we also have an active role. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Sarah?
Similar to some of what Councillor Sharp said, I wouldn't say I see the committee members as a similar role to staff. I do think there are quite a number of differences. I would agree. I think the primary role would be to provide advice. And I think an important part in the mandate is certainly, I guess, the understanding I had of the committee when it was being struck, and I think it's even reflected in the current priorities we have, is that we're promoting the stewardship, preservation, conservation, protection, enhancement of whichever word of environment we choose. And I think the promoting was really key. Promoting different initiatives and suggesting advice to staff, promoting in the community. I think that was really a big component of what this committee was intended to be. And please, anybody correct me if I'm wrong, particularly the councillors, when you saw this struck, that really was to be a really big part of what we were going to do. And again, I do think that is reflected in the current priorities that we have listed. So I think we just really want to maybe, as you said, Chair, we are running out of time in terms of what time remains too. And I just hope we really kind of look at all those pieces and what can we do within those priorities that we did set some time ago, so that hopefully we can deliver on some of those as well.
Any other comments?
Chair, I liked how Director Sarah summed it up. Thank you.
Are you happy, Aaron?
That helps a little bit. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I was trying to get a resolution or a motion to approve the terms of a reference as amended. And I had asked Peter if he had a list of the amendments and if he wanted to go through them, so to refresh our memory, or do you just want to take the vote?
Through you, Chair, I can leave that up to the committee. If the committee wants me to go through the changes, I can do
Well,
that.
if you have them handy, I'd like you to go through them.
Okay, I don't have a list, but I can go through the document again if you like.
If you
Share that out.
could very quickly.
So the first change, and just let me know if I missed any, Chair. The first one was to add natural and built environment here. The next change was the inclusion of vice chair under roles and responsibilities, roles and responsibilities. And then we updated, under this section, we had active committee. So we've updated that to Grimsby Green. And then I believe that's all the changes, correct, Chair?
I believe so. Okay, do I have a mover? Haley. A seconder, Aaron. All in favor of the terms of reference as amended? That carries.
Aye.
Next item then is the grass cutting and areas of naturalization. And the intent here was to review the previous resolution and discuss the focus area. And the previous resolution do you have it share screen on that, Peter, or should I read it?
Sorry, the resolution form?
The resolution from the last, the August 11th minutes.
I have it if you want to see it. Do you want me to share it?
Sure, go ahead. It had to do with grass cutting.
Sorry, I have it on split screen, but I hope you all can read that. Do you see the sheet?
Yes,
So it's right here. Do you want me to read it, Chair, or do you want to read it?
go ahead and read it, Sarah.
The resolution that was written was resolved that staff report back to the advisory committee at the October meeting on current policies and procedures and contracted arrangements concerning grass cutting in Grimsby.
Right, and I think the intent was that would come back to the committee on October the 27th. And when it was, when the minutes were considered by committee of the whole, I guess it was, on September the 7th, there was some discussion about that. And I had sent out an email asking anybody that was interested to listen to the recording of that meeting. I think the incident occurred at about minute 3 or 4, so you didn't have to go through a lot of the recordings. I think there was some concern expressed about that, and perhaps Sarah can elaborate on the concern.
So I will do my best, and I might ask others to chime in if they participated more, because I was not at that August meeting for our committee, and I also missed a chunk of the conversation, unfortunately, at committee of the whole. So I did come into it late. I did not hear the entire thing. So please, even members of council, if I get it incorrectly, please do correct me. My understanding was the gist of it was just, typically at advisory committees, we're not reviewing contracts and things of that nature at the committee, at an advisory committee level. It's a little more sort of in the weeds of the operations that we would normally go. My understanding, even in speaking with Bruce in the past, because we have talked about this, was I think the intent was to really look at how we can reduce mowing. So I think it was just concerned with the way it was written and what the intent was for staff to go after. And so I did ask Carl as well, just to ensure that, we're all on the same page as to what we're trying to achieve and make sure we can hone in on that. I completely understand. I think I understand what the overall intent was, and I believe it is to reduce the mowing that we are doing in our community. And one of the things we've talked about, and actually Olivia Fraser and I have been working on, who is our Parks and Open Space Coordinator, who you're going to see a little later, is rather than taking the broad brush at policy and contract levels, can we start to identify some specific areas where we can do this and really go after targeting them, at least as a start, just as a more manageable start, even on our side of it, quite frankly, where we can really look at not just reducing the mowing, but really even shifting the conversation to how are we naturalizing the area. So it isn't just stop cutting. It might be what is in that space then. Is it naturalized? Just, let it kind of grow. Are we looking to maybe do some pollination? Maybe there's some tree addition, and really take that type of approach. So I don't want to modify what the wishes of this committee were, but I do believe that was the concern and sort of discussion. And again, please, if I'm not understanding that correctly, please do correct me. And maybe Councillor Bothwell's going to.
Chair, if I could speak to that.
Yes, please.
Thank you. And yes, Sarah, you captured it quite well. It was basically exactly what you said. The intent was just to review the overall policies and like you said, where there's opportunities for looking at some type of change to the routine that we're doing. It was not to go into the weeds and look at, how much we're paying somebody to do what, where are they going, who's the contractor, not at all. So that wasn't the intention. And that's what I said at council when I was clarifying. The intention was not, it was to look at increasing pollinator habitat and looking at what our current policies are with respect to just overall maintenance of town lands, et cetera. So unfortunately, it did get taken the wrong way. But yeah, you've captured it exactly what the intent was. Now, what I just wanted to add to that, and I think it's great. I've had a couple residents reach out and say they would like to see the trails more naturalized, especially once it's Southward Park. So I just want to keep, as we're doing the trails master plan, I don't know if that's going to get captured, but they definitely said, hey, instead of gravel and or whatever you're doing, tarring, look at maybe just naturalized trails. So I'll just leave that with you as well. Thank you.
If
Bruce?
I add a point, oh, want Bruce to go? Sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Again, Sarah has summed this up well, and I thank her for the interpretation that I had meant all the way along.
I'll just add what I've already told Sarah. I thought we as a committee, we went a little bit too far with too much detail and too much work for her staff. Yeah, I thought it was quite onerous to get into the contracted arrangements and the costs and revenues. It was to be a high level review of the policies and areas that were being grass was being cut, and review where potentially we could do less and save some money, but not necessarily identify to the penny how much money we would be saving. And I think we also, if you take that matter back to June, I think we were interested in electric lawnmowers. Was something that the committee was interested in, and that seems to have been lost along the way. So I wanted a discussion on this matter so that we don't, when it goes to council, there isn't all this controversy that we're infringing and we're asking staff to spend a lot of time needlessly on things when a high level, I think the high level analysis was what the committee wanted. Bruce,
Sure, I could have a moment.
Bruce, Bruce, go
Councilor
ahead.
Sharp, you want to go ahead?
No, Bruce, you go first.
Thanks. Yes, and I'd just like to thank you. I'd just like to go back to what Sarah said earlier about promote. Most of the grass that's cut in the town of Grimsby is cut on private property. Ideally, I would like to see where the town can review its own policies, set an example of how areas can be reduced, and also the frequency of mowing. Because then we get into an air pollution thing. Promotion of electric lawnmowers with our homeowners. Those are the kind of things that simply like to review those ideas, and where they're acceptable, promote them. You know, I keep reading in the news that by 2035, we're going to have a difficulty buying a vehicle that's gas powered. I think that's going to come even sooner for lawn mowing equipment. They're far more polluting. So those are the kinds of things that I look forward to reviewing as with this committee, with staff, have staff tell this committee what their policies are, and then look and say, well, how can they be reviewed? Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When we were talking about high level policy and stuff, like we might think of, say, the frequency of grass cutting on town property, and staff might like report back to say that we cut the grass every 5 days in parks or something, right? And so we might make a recommendation to say, well, why don't we cut the grass every 6 days, right? I mean, and then that would be over the course of a whole summer, which is 100 days long. That would be 18 grass cuts instead of 20, and that's 10% less grass cutting, right? And that might save some money, but we don't want staff to figure out exactly how much money it will save, and we don't need to figure out the exact amount of tons of carbon that it would save. I was under the impression that we just wanted to get some information like this where we could make some recommendations and things that council doesn't have enough time to go into the nitty gritty about. We could say like, oh, why don't we, like my example before, we could say, why don't we cut the grass every 8 days instead of every 7 days, right? And how would that affect us? We don't need you to tell us the exact impact on everything, but we might make those recommendations, but a higher level. So I think it was misinterpreted, and I think that the interpretation now is getting better. Thank you.
Any other comments?
The only other comment I just like to make, if I can, and I think it's somewhere maybe this committee could help as well, as again in that area of promotion, because one of the things we get into certainly on our side is, you know, the concern over ticks is huge, right? So as soon as any grass gets long or any areas are left naturalized, that is a concern. And I think we could do some work towards promoting and educating, you know, how can we make these spaces safe and people feel comfortable using them? The largest area we probably have of grass cutting is certainly our parks and our sports fields. Obviously, sports fields have to be maintained in a certain way. And parks, we want to make sure that the kids feel comfortable and welcome to play on them because that's what they're for. And then there's other areas, of course, that we can naturalize. But I think we could definitely do some work as well collectively, whether we put content on our website or out on social, talking about why do we naturalize areas? And it isn't just lack of attention, because that is what we get sometimes. But there are reasons we're doing it. And that might be an interesting area for this group to do some work on and help with as well, as to how do we communicate that to the community and how do they understand, you know, why we're doing that in some of the areas, what are the benefits? I think that would be very valuable.
Aaron?
I guess this is a question for Sarah. I think I want to better, we've brought up promotion now a lot as one of the mandates for this committee. I think I'd like to understand better how we would go about doing that. Like what would be involved? Is it something we've talked about, you know, using our social media channels, using existing ones as opposed to creating new ones? How do we go about doing that? Do we come up with some sample tweets and then bring it back to this committee? Does that have to then go back to council? Like what's involved in us coming up with a social media, you know, blitz or plan or program? What do we have to do that?
Yeah, I love that question, Erin. So we could choose as a committee to do a bit of a campaign, do a little bit of a blitz, and we could develop some messaging. I do some of the communications as well for organizations, so we can certainly make sure we get those out where we create maybe a couple slogans, some messaging. We can put some content on our website. We are actually in the process of creating an environment page on our website to try to start to share some of these types of things, maybe links to good resources to learn more. Like you said, social media taglines, a slogan, maybe even, you know, be present at an activity or an event one time if it was appropriate to say, hey, did you know? Those things can go a long ways. Even though I think the electric lawnmower is a great one as well. I think when people actually hear some of the statistics, which I know Bruce has shared, I certainly opened my eyes, quite honestly, people are interested in that. And I think it can affect change. So there is a lot we could do and really build some awareness there. So if that's something of interest, I'd love to explore that with this group.
I believe the reason that Aaron brought that up is that it was a big part of the Green Acknowledgement Awards committee, subcommittee. Aaron and Haley spent a lot of time on that. And part of that was educating the community in terms of what this committee does and ferreting out business or people that are doing good green things and that kind of stuff. And Aaron and Haley both are a lot smarter than I am on social media and stuff like that. So I think our question is it something that we actually get to do after council says yes, do it? Or is it something that we recommend and then staff does it? Or is it a combination thereof? And I guess we can learn more when we get to Aaron and Haley's presentation. But I think that for me was the question that Aaron asked.
So I can address it quickly and then you can dive into it more, but I would say definitely a combination. Use some of the resources and tools that we readily have available, including our social media pages. But if you guys can help with some of the content and the messaging, we would want council, of course, to agree to the scope of what we're doing with the awards. But once we kind of have that green light, I would say we run with the program. So I think it's sort of just defining a little bit of how do we see that programming taking place, making sure there's support for that. You know, we could even create a web page for it, maybe even under the environment page, and maybe each one of these gets a one-page story, and we could just, you know, again, on our side, make sure it checks all the boxes in terms of accessibility and compliance and all those various things, and you guys just give us the content. So I would just definitely ways to do this, and I think it could be quite successful.
Great. You know what? I think I'll leave that part. I have more questions, but I'll leave it until we get to the part about the awards.
Okay, is there any further discussion on grass cutting and the resolution? Bruce, you have your hand up?
Sorry, Chair, I was waving a flyaway.
Pardon me? Oh, you were waving and flying away. Okay. Any further discussion on the item? Okay, can I have a mover? And I guess, Peter, we need some sort of resolution on this. Just, I don't know what it is that the discussion.
Chair, I do have a question though. I think
Yes,
there was, if I remember correctly from the shared screen, there was a resolution that staff at the October meeting
Yes.
would bring some information to this committee. Am I correct with that, Sarah?
Yeah, we can do that. So if it's agreeable to everybody, we will bring some information of a few priority areas that we've identified. We could do something like this as a start. If that's agreeable to everybody, I think that's where we'd like to start, and then we can kind of go from there.
I like the chair. I like that idea. Let's, you know, crawl before we walk. Let's get a start and proceed slowly, because there's a lot of parameters that affect this, including some of the ones that Sarah identified earlier in the conversation. So I don't know, Chair, whether we need a resolution now. I think it's already there from before, and we're just waiting for the October meeting.
Through you, Chair, if any resolution, you may just want to say that the update with respect to the item be received.
Well, the draft resolution reads, resolved that the information with respect to grass cutting and areas of naturalization be received by the advisory committee. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Haley, seconded by Councillor Bothwell. All in favor? Carried.
Aye.
Peter, did we ever vote on the vice chair? And yeah, I guess it was the vice chair. I can't recall whether we actually formally did that after we approved the terms of reference.
To retry, I believe the procedure was we voted on it prior to the terms of reference.
Okay. The next item on the agenda then is the item on tree planting. I think the best way to handle this is that it be introduced by Councillor Sharp, who was the leader of the committee that started working on this, and then Councillor Sharp can defer to Ms. Fraser if he wants, or I'll just turn it over to Councillor Sharp.
Yeah, happily. Thank you, Chair. So we did strike an ad hoc committee, and we met once with regard to tree planting, and there was about 4 of us, and we sat and had a discussion on what we can do for tree planting. We were fairly broad, thinking about like, what is a tree, right? Like, is it a little seedling 2 inches tall, or is it a sapling 4 feet tall, or is it like a 10-foot high, somewhat mature tree? And we talked a little about budget. We kind of went away with some thoughts about finding out, maybe doing some research and finding out what the possibilities are of tree planting. And after the committee, I had some discussions with staff, and we have proposed there's a tree planting initiative where like not-for-profit groups can apply for some grant money from the town and use that money towards tree planting, and that kind of helps us get the community involved and lets people kind of take their own initiative. And I don't want to steal the thunder away from the plan. It was very preliminary at the time, so I will hand it back over to Sarah and Olivia, and they can explain it. Thanks.
Sarah, Olivia.
If I may just introduce Olivia then. So Olivia is our Parks and Open Space Coordinator, started early this year with us. And I think Olivia has definitely a keen interest in a lot of the things that we're talking about. She'll be one of the people for sure that helps a lot in the background with any of the projects we're working on. So great that you got to meet her. And she was researching some different ideas that other municipalities have done and came up with a suggestion for the committee's consideration. It could look a lot like this or a little bit different, but I think it's a great idea that's worth exploring, that we could find ways to start with. Might be small and grow it, but I think it is an interesting idea. So take it away, Olivia. Olivia, I don't know if you're on mute. Oh. Yeah, we're not hearing your volume. Try it now without the presentation. No.
Maybe try you right click the mute button and you change it to like use system audio or something. Right click where it says mute. Sometimes that helps.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yay. Okay. Start over. I'm just going to share my screen again. All right. And we're done. All right. So thank you everyone for having me tonight. As Sarah mentioned, my name's Olivia. I'm the Parks and Open Space Coordinator. So I'm here to talk tonight about a potential program. So it's kind of a starting idea that the committee can further explore. And we just think it's kind of an excellent opportunity to start the conversation and involve the community in the process. So to start it off, I have a quote. So someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. So what actions can we take to improve our local ecosystem? So I have two highlighted here. So the first one is to prioritize green infrastructure. So that's through public projects that directly affect the network of natural and restored ecosystems. And then the second is to develop community green programs. So a wide range of programs targeted at specific stakeholders and individuals. So some background information. We're kind of proposing that this program could be called something along the lines of the community tree planting program organized by the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, with the vision of aiming to invest in tree planting and stewardship on private land to help enhance and expand Grimsby's urban forest and to improve the health of the local environment. So who? It could be organized by the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, and some eligible applicants could be Grimsby community groups, Grimsby-based businesses, institution and education groups, teams, clubs, or property owners. So what is it? It would be financial assistance for planting material. So that could be up to a maximum of $300 for native species with a focus on trees. So funding would be dependent on the size of the event and then the number of trees to be planted. And then depending on the success of the applicants, if they are granted money through the program, they could receive a few different possibilities of support. So that could be education, training, or technical support. So that could look like a site visit from a member of the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, a planting manual, help with species selection for optimal survival rate, and then also access to native planting resources. So just taking a step back, I think it's important to look at why we're targeting private property. So 95% of the Carolinian forest is located on private property. And then the region of Niagara is growing significantly. So this will further impact nature and the health of wildlife. Private landscape is a critical piece of restoring lost habitat and creating a healthy future for existing wildlife. And only 2% of the forest is publicly owned. So that just really limits the planting opportunities. So this program has the potential to create a stewardship opportunity to assist with the protection and preservation of Grimsby's ecosystem. So the thought is to kind of use this as a pilot program starting spring 2022, hoping to plant between April and June. And then there is the potential to incorporate fall planting programs in the future. So applicants would be required to have a staff or volunteer capacity to organize, endorse, and execute the event. And as I mentioned, it would be on private land within the town of Grimsby's boundary. But we really think that this program has the opportunity to kind of leave the restrictions open-ended and allow anyone who has an applicable story to submit an application. So how, I've kind of made a little bit of a framework of how the application process could work. So applicants could submit an online form outlining the proposed event. And they would be expected to kind of explain their story on how Grimsby's environment is important to them. And then the completed applications that meet the required eligibility will be assessed and a decision will be made by committee members. And then the committee would use an assessment criteria to kind of rate those applications. And then potential uses for the assessment criteria could be concept, feasibility, budget, and impact. And that was the last slide. Thank you everyone for your time, and I'm happy to answer any question.
So thanks, Olivia. Again, I'll just say, again, it was just thought it was a fun idea that we've seen. It sounds like other municipalities have had some great success with, and curious to get some feedback as to what everybody thinks about something like this and for the tree planting initiative. Maybe, Olivia, maybe just unshare just so we could see, and we could always pop it back up if need be, just so Carl can see hands.
Through the chair, if I could speak once more.
Go ahead, Dave.
This is really exciting. Like, we were talking about $300, and being a person who's planted trees before, I know that if you shop right and if you buy, I was shopping at this wholesale nursery, and certain types of trees like whips, they're not really fully mature, and but they're not just little saplings, and I was getting them like for $300. You could plant 10 or 15 trees, including some stakes and stuff to help them to withstand the winds. And so this is, if somebody's interested and they have either a piece of property they own or a piece of property that they know someone who owns, and they wanted to plant, say, 12 trees that are somewhat established, this is an opportunity where they could do that through this small amount of funding. And they could also have some volunteer help from yours truly. I would be happy to help. I'm great with a shovel. I have my own work gloves and boots. And this is the kind of thing that I'm happy to be involved in. I've committed that we weren't sure when we're going to get some trees planted yet. And I'm going to commit to planting at least one tree this year before the snow flies. And I would love to get involved. Somebody who wants to do a fall planting or a spring planting might be more appropriate for this grant. And I think this is just a really neat way to let the community participate in this tree planting. So thank you for bringing this to us, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Bruce.
Yes, I applaud the initiative. Thank you for putting the presentation together, Olivia. Just have one footnote. I hope you have success with this getting into the schoolyards and the schools. Thank you.
Chair, I don't know if you can see my hand.
Yes, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Thank you. I guess this question, thank you, Olivia. It was a great presentation. You really know how to do social media well. I love the transitioning there you did. It's great. It captures people's attention, and I hope you need to liaise with our little guys over here next to you on the screen when we do our promotion for social media with Aaron and Haley, because I think you guys would be a great team with getting some really interesting stuff out there. The $300. So you're talking about a grant. Sarah, again, we have no budget, we have no money. Whose money are we using? Are we basically giving the taxpayer back their money, through this grant program? Are we using the existing tree planting budget that you have in the budget? I just know council's going to say, where are you getting the money to do this? How much do we have? 300, that's one award to one group. How many of them are we giving away each year? Are we budgeting for them? And what happens if you get a slew of applications, or where's your limit? So I just think it's great. I mean, it'd be great to you're very good, Sarah, I know you did the other grant program and stuff, or the community grants, and you put a really good policy together for that. This seems to follow a very great idea. And I think the policy moving forward would be great. I just want to make sure that we're not going to get questioned by council, like, where's the money? How are you doing this? And, whatever. So thanks.
Certainly, and I'm happy to answer that. Maybe Olivia, I'll take that one just for our team. So just to sort of back up, I think if the committee overall likes this idea, what the next step would be to flush it out a little bit more, develop a little bit more of a scope of a program, and prepare a bit of a report and specific program that the group could support, and then it would go on, of course, to committee of the whole, where I know I would have to address those questions, as you said. For this year, we do have some money that goes towards community initiatives and even special events and various things in our department. We haven't been able to use some of those things in the same way we normally would because of COVID. So what a great year to be able to use a little bit of that resource and put it into a program. It wouldn't be a giant amount of money. We just don't have it. So $2,000, $3,000 is probably the most we could give, but I think that gives a pretty substantial start to a program. And I don't think we would look to commit to ongoing years, because I just don't know that we could, but maybe an outcome, depending on the success, would be to look at exploring that. But that's how I would suggest to use the funds for this year. That, of course, and I will have to tell everybody this, it would have to be approved by council, but I think there's a good case for using some of those resources we have for something like this year. Plant some COVID trees, maybe we'll call them that.
I think that's awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, I totally support Councillor Sharp and you with moving this forward. However, we can get it moving quickly, and so that those trees, like Councillor Sharp's tree, can get planted this fall. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? So we would approve in principle the program that Olivia has outlined, and Olivia would need to flesh that out and do a staff report to council. Do we have time to even come back to this committee, or I don't think we do. I think it's got to go directly to council. Sarah?
It could come through the committee once more if we wanted to just look at the detail. I suppose that's up to the group. You might just want to weigh in a little bit more on what the specifics of the program would look like. But I do, I guess, leave that up to the group. I don't think that would hurt, especially if it is going to be your program in many ways. Well, sure, you kind of agree to the details, but I think we could have it ready to go for next meeting, and then it would immediately go to the council meeting thereafter, and see if we can't get that going.
But we have to
want to try to do it fairly quickly.
We're going to try to plant the trees before Christmas, right? Or
No.
is it next spring? Are you talking
Yeah,
about
it would be spring. So
oh, it's next spring.
Yeah, so ideally we would be able to move the program forward.
Okay.
Okay. The planting would need to be in the spring.
I was confused with Dave wants to plant one tree this year, so he confused me. Anyways, okay.
At least one tree.
Yes. Okay. So then the report would come back to this committee and then go on to council after that. Any other comments? Do I have a mover to approve the concept put forth by Olivia? Councillor Bothwell? Seconded by Bruce McKenzie. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Aye.
Can you read the motion, Carl? What motion do you have that we're voting on?
I'm making it up. Or maybe I should look at
Peter's got it.
at the resolution. I have.
I do have one drafted if it might work better than the one provided to you. Resolve that the presentation from staff be received and that the committee approve in principle the program outlined by staff, and that a draft report be presented to the committee prior to council approval if time permits.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I'm
perfect.
supporting. Yeah, so we got a mover and a seconder on that. That's great. Yep.
And I think everybody raise your hand if you're still in favor. Carried.
Aye.
At long last, that brings us to Haley and Aaron, who are going to talk about the Green Acknowledgement Awards, Recognition Awards, somewhat dovetails with some of the comments that have been made previously about moving forward with getting the community involved in this initiative of ours. So, and the chairman of that ad hoc committee was Haley. So I'm going to turn it over to Haley, and Aaron and I guess we're also on the committee. So Haley.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so I haven't really got a presentation. It's just the minutes, which I didn't get a chance to send out. So I can either share my screen with the minutes or just talk through them. There's not too many points. So yeah, we first thing we discussed was the categories again. We didn't receive any other comments on from the previous meeting, so we recommend just using the categories that were suggested originally, which were business, community, stewardship, planning and development, youth, and government. 2, 3, so that's 5 categories. Then we discussed creating a logo or a design, not just for the awards, but for the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee in general. So Carl has since spoken with Sharon Porter, who is able to provide some samples, sample logos. So I guess we'll present them at the next meeting. For timeline, we discussed posting some teaser information starting now and again to promote Grimsby Green in general, and then alongside the upcoming awards. So we had the timeline for that starting October, November, December, and then open up for nominations in January, review the nominations in February, council approval in March for the nominations, and then the awards announcement and presentation on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. So then the award presentation, we reviewed various locations and discussed that Southwood Park was probably the preferred space because of its size and the fact that it has the hall and the washroom facilities, if they're going to be open at the time. But if not, there's enough space to distance. We discussed the general process. So, we were going to discuss with Sarah tonight about how to communicate the request for nominations, but you already went over that with the social media and everything, which is great. And then Erin can create some sample social media posts and draft the schedule and a survey with the questions for the nomination requests. And then the other additional notes that I had and after talking about the priorities tonight as well, was the fact that we can, with the awards, we can incorporate all three of the priorities potentially. The community engagement would be through the nomination and awards process itself. But then also previously mentioned was tree planting, and the idea of planting a tree on behalf of every award that's given out. So I'm not sure if Southwood Park would be a space available for that to happen, or if the funding is there. But we thought that'd be a good way to incorporate that program as well. And then also the litter removal, because it is Earth Day. We could have a cleanup that morning, and then an extra award for something like the most litter collected, or something like that, just to incorporate everything, all the priorities. And that is it. And then, yeah, I don't know if Erin, if you want to speak more to the promotion of it.
Yeah, well, I think when Carl and I and Haley sat down and talked, I had planned to put together some sample social media posts and a schedule, like a rough schedule. But I needed more clarification from Sarah as to how it would all look before I started putting things together, because I really wasn't sure if it was something that we would write, or I would write, or we would write as a subcommittee and then present to you. I wasn't sure the process. So now that I understand it a little bit better, what I'll do is after this, before the next meeting, I'll come up with a couple sample social media posts. We're hoping that the first one we put out just relatively soon though, and it would include the whatever logo we decide on that comes from Sharon, so that we can first start introducing us as a committee before we start just, talking about awards and nominations and different things. So I think the first post has to be an introduction to our committee and what our mandate is generally. And then, like Haley said, then we would just put out through the social media channels and the town website, if that's available to us, what the criteria is for the nominations, what the categories are. And then we originally, I think, spoke about possibly doing an email where they would email in nominations, but in conversation with Haley and Carl, it seemed like maybe something like a Survey Monkey or along those lines would be better, where it just, simple questions like the nominator's name and contact, who they're nominating, and like in 250 words or less, tell us why you're nominating this person and what category it might fall under. And then we receive those for the month of January. And then as a committee, we can, I don't know if it would be as a subcommittee or as a committee, probably as a full committee, review those nominations and then come up with the awards based on whatever criteria we've decided, what ranking system we have to decide on to pick these award winners. So I think what we'll do between now and the next meeting is come up with those questions for the Survey Monkey. And I don't know, again, Sarah, if that's something that the town has access to, some kind of survey system or something, instead of using a public forum like Survey Monkey, I'm not sure. So we can come up with those questions. I'll come up with a couple social media examples, I guess, and then we can present them in the next committee meeting. Although we'd like to potentially start this getting something out before then. So I'm not sure if that's going to be an option now, because we still are waiting on Sharon and we have to decide on what logo. So maybe it won't be starting till November at this point. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it. Does anyone have any feedback for us?
Oh, Carl, you're on mute. I see.
Yeah. I just want to add, I did communicate with Sharon Porter, and I guess Sharon and Sarah were communicating with each other prior to my becoming a chairman. So Sharon sent that information to me. She had developed some logos, and I think if we're going to use a logo, we have to get council approval. But it was my observation that we don't want to compete with the town's logo or its vision. So I think it's important that to get something that fits in with the town's concept, town's logo. What's your tagline? Natural or by, I don't know what that.
Nature.
Yeah, that's it. And Sharon had also worked on a tagline. So I think to get the message out that to the community at large that we're here and what we're doing, and getting feedback from them. I think it's important to have a vision, a logo, a tagline that people can identify with, but I don't know that we want to, well, I know we don't want to compete with the town's vision, so everything's got to go through council. And I did talk to the newspaper and they're prepared. I think you need a lot of input. You need nominations from the public, and I think the newspaper is probably the best way to get nominations. I think there are a lot of people out there right now that are doing good things and they should be rewarded for. So I think the newspaper is the way to get that input. And I have talked to one of the newspapers. I think we need to talk to the other one, but until we know exactly what we're doing, I think we're wasting our time. But in concept, the one newspaper has agreed to do something for us. So I think Haley's idea was that this would be fleshed out in more detail, and we would come back to the committee with something more formal. Any input that you want to give us now would be greatly appreciated. Sarah, you're smiling.
Sorry, I think Councillor Bothwell has her hand raised, and she.
I can't see it. You know, as I said, let's stop being formal and let's.
Sorry. Yeah.
Just interrupt me.
Okay, then I'll
Councillor Bothwell.
Bothwell was there first.
Sorry, Sarah, and it's probably a question for you anyway. And well, Aaron, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting as well. Awards, and I know Haley mentioned, you know, planting a tree for the award winners. At one point, we were looking at what would the award look like, and whether there would be a budget for that, and for the event. So I know you guys are still working out the final the assessment criteria, et cetera, and the process document. But do we know whether we've got money, or what if the award is just going to be a tree? Is it going to be kind of like through the tree planting budget and that's it? Or did you come up with any other ideas for how we can manage what the person gets?
And sorry, Councillor, are you asking myself that, or are you asking Haley?
Sorry, I guess it would be Haley or Aaron, I think. Okay. Sorry. And then you're probably going to tie in if there's money involved.
Well, let me try to answer that. I had asked Sarah that question before our committee met. And Sarah indicated to me that if it was a nominal amount of money, she would have some funds in her budget. Beyond that, I think if you looked at her priorities, you will see under the activity section that there is the notion of some fundraising. And we haven't scratched the surface on that yet. You'll just have to wait and see. I think we're talking about a plaque or some nominal award, a framed certificate, which could be as cheap as $25, $30, $40.
I do think we also discussed possibly if there was any way to give them gift certificates or something for some kind of environmental related something. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's why we like the idea of the planting of the tree. So it was something that we could tap into the tree planting budget, and then they can always come back to that park and say, this was the tree that we won't put plaques on the trees or any kind of labels, but then they can refer to that tree as their tree that they got because they were being environmentally friendly. So
I think a bush would be just as good. Like we don't have to have just trees. I think, don't we need diversity, Bruce, here? Don't we need like bushes and other vegetation that is naturalized in our naturalized areas? So depending on how big their award is, they get the smaller bush, the bigger bush, the bigger, I don't know. But I mean, there's a variety of different, I don't know. I guess we haven't quite finalized what the award structure looks like. Is that's what I'm hearing, I guess, right? Okay. Thank you.
Chair Carl.
Yes, Bruce.
Put in 2 cents worth. Having had the pleasure of receiving some recognition awards from the town before, they've been simple certificates, and I've been proud to have in my house. They came in a vinyl folder. I doubt the actual cost exceeded a couple of dollars for that. And then the recipient has a choice of whether they want to put it in a frame and put it on their wall in their home or in their office. And the one little downside about providing a tree is mortality rates are high unless the tree is well cared for. And it looks bad and causes Sarah and her staff problems later on when she gets the call in 6 months' time, my tree died, fix my problem. Certificates don't die and they're easily produced. So anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that. But I love the recognition program that Aaron and Haley have put together here so far.
Haley?
Yeah, just going back to Councillor Bothwell's idea of a bush, if we're trying to get more like pollination gardens and areas like that, would there be the opportunity at Southwood Park to create a rain garden and then have the, instead of trees, it be some kind of pollination plant that they then go and put in the ground in the rain garden? Something like that.
We could look at something like that. As Bruce said, and I do think he's right, my experience with civic recognition and different things is, oh, I'm just getting a note that our Zoom meeting is supposed to end at 9. So we'll see what happens. Just one moment. Peter, I don't know if you can converse with Maria and see if they can extend it or what we can do. In the meantime, that would be great. We got 7 minutes. So if it does interrupt, I apologize. We'll figure out a way to reconnect you. We should be able to figure it out. Okay, so I'll do that. I'm sorry. So I do think a lot of what people really like in their recognition, I think people do appreciate the gift, but it's the story. And it's the thanks. And so I really do think that that's the place to focus. Even our civic recognition program, we've moved it online into social media, partly because we had to. And the uptake was huge. And even to really give them that. So we could look at a gift, but as it was said, you know, sometimes if something doesn't live or they don't really like the variety, or if you do this for 10 years, do we run out of space? I've just seen these happen. So we could look at that, but we might even want to think, is there a gift we could give back to them? Like, you know, if it's a small organization, you know, a coffee break on us, and maybe there's a community member that would sponsor that. So might just want a few different options with that, but I think we can play with those ideas. And I said, really pump up the awareness that they get, acknowledge them maybe through council and do some social media and some storying around them. I find when people are going to tell you what they've done, they really just like having their story shared. So I do think we should focus on there. In terms of supports we can offer, Aaron, you mentioned SurveyMonkey. We do have a form builder tool on our website that we could use and do it all through there as well. And then we could share all of that data with everybody. And we could build, again, a bit of a web presence on the town's page just so they can get all of the information and all of the criteria. So when you're promoting, you're sending them there. So we can certainly make all those resources available. And I just think for next steps, it's probably fleshing out some of those details. What does it look like? You know, really defining what are the criteria, who's evaluating, what's our timeline, and sort of have that in a report that we could take forward to council to have them just approve and support the project and support the awards as a whole as well. And the only thing I just wanted to touch on was just the logo. Just wanting clarification, is this logo for the awards or is it for the committee as a whole? I think it's the committee of a whole. Or sorry, I shouldn't use those words, for the Grimsby Green Committee. And then as Carl mentioned, that is something as well that as a committee, you all should just agree to and support, and it should go through that process. So we can certainly look at some samples that were shared. And the slogan idea I know was talked about at our committee before, just to sort of have a little bit of a tagline to grab to. So maybe we can do a bit of work on that and just bring that before the group for next month.
Right.
It's helpful.
So yeah, I think somehow the logo got kind of muddled into our subcommittee, but yeah, I think we were looking more for something that would be for the whole committee, but then we could use that logo on a certificate, say that we used for the awards, we put that logo on the certificate. So sorry, I just want to double check. So the next thing we should do then as a subcommittee is come up with a detailed or a report of some kind and then have council approve that, and then we can start coming up with the detailed like social media posts and all that stuff.
And I'm happy to chat with you a little bit about it in terms of just what we would normally include in those things, just so that you kind of have that proper structure then that kind of gives you that marching ability to move forward. And then, you know, again, just if there are budgetary items, just identifying again where that comes from, just so that's all up front and on the table, and then we just dive into the fun stuff.
Yeah, like if you have a template of some kind or something like that, that'd be great for our subcommittee to work from. That would be really, really good. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, are we running out of time? Like we have 4 minutes to finish this meeting. Is that right, Sarah?
Peter, are you there?
I'm here, yes. From what I've seen, reaching the end of the scheduled time shouldn't end the meeting.
Okay. I don't know that it will either. I think it'll be okay.
Okay, well, let's wrap the Green Acknowledgement Award item up, and let's okay, I have a resolution on that. Peter, I'm going to read this. Resolve that the information with respect to the Green Acknowledgement Awards be received by the advisory committee. That is the resolution for the item. Do I have a mover? Aaron, a seconder, Bruce, all in favor? Carried. Okay, Justin. Hello? Can you
That
still?
was Councillor Sharp chiming in.
I think he was just supporting the resolution.
Oh, okay, because he's not on my screen anymore. So which brings us.
That was me. Sorry, I had to switch to a telephone call.
Oh, so that picture of the telephone is you.
Yeah, that's me now. I just had to change the
Okay.
phone.
Okay. So item number 10 are items that are coming to the committee at a future meeting. First item is the commemorative tree program - tree tags. I'm not familiar with this item. I think it was on the agenda prior to my becoming chairman, so I didn't pay much attention to it. Sarah, do we have an update on that? Is that something that we have dealt with, can remove from the agenda? What do we want to do with that one?
I think you can probably remove it. We did talk a little bit about commemorative tree programs, and one of the members, former members, was interested in helping to explore some ideas with tree tagging that she had. And she isn't on our committee anymore. We have been doing a bit of work on it on our own. So unless anybody here really feels strongly about it, I think we can probably remove it and focus on some of the other good stuff we've talked about.
Okay, then there's the Niagara Transit Initiative, and for whatever reason, I was contacted by a staff member of the town of Fort Erie, who is on the committee that is looking at alternative ways of providing transit to Niagara region. I could not attend the session. I did invite members of the committee to attend. I don't know. I had a power failure at the same time as that presentation was being held. So I don't know if you attended that or not, but I don't propose to discuss it any further. I will send you, if you don't already have it, there was a presentation that they made, and there's a future reports, I guess, going to all of the 12 municipalities in Niagara region about this topic, and I'm sure that you will see it in the newspapers, on the council agenda, etc. So unless anybody has questions, I'm going to move that I'll send you what I have, and you can look at it, and then it'd be removed from the agenda. Any comments? Next item is the invitation to the planning director to attend our next committee meeting on October the 27th. Sarah, is that something that I should invite her to, or should you invite her? Has she already been invited? Or Bruce, did you invite her? I think it was your idea. Who's going to make the arrangements, folks?
I don't mind. I know Bruce, you did speak with her, so I think you discussed the idea, but I'm happy to share just the date and time and see if if she's able to do that and let you know what if that's something that's lined up. Unless that's different from what you discussed, Bruce. Okay, I'm getting thumbs up, so that's good.
No, that's exact correct. Thank you very much. I'm hoping that she's available that date.
And we can arrange to put her on the agenda first, so she doesn't have to wait till 9 o'clock. The next item then to be discussed at the next meeting is the NPCA presentation on the tree planting programs that may be available through them or through the province of Ontario, and possible grants. I believe, Bruce, this is your item, so would you like to address it?
Yes, thanks. I'll keep this brief. I have discussed this in outline, in general terms with staff, and staff, subject to availability or through me, we can explain the program. Generally, the Conservation Authority assists applicants with their tree planting efforts if the tree planting program is aligned with their restoration program. And basically their restoration program is to reduce forest fragmentation and increase forest cover for creating wildlife corridors. It may be difficult for the town to fit that definition, but I do expect to explore this further with Niagara Conservation Authority staff. And then I also understand through Sarah and a previous site meeting at 40 Creek that the Conservation Authority is working with the town of Grimsby in a restoration project at the mouth of 40 Creek. So one way or another, for a future meeting, we'll get more information to you about the tree planting program. But generally it's, you apply for the program and then you're in the process to see whether you can be awarded financial assistance for your tree planting design. Thank you.
Okay, I have a resolution which reads as follows. Resolved that the update provided with respect to the current initiatives for the commemorative tree program tree tags, Niagara Transit Initiative, invitation to the planning director, and the NPCA presentation on tree planting programs be received by the advisory committee. Any discussion on the resolution? Can I have a mover? Aaron, a seconder? Councillor Bothwell, all in favor? Carries.
Aye.
Okay, yeah, Dave. Keep forgetting about you. Which brings us to new business. I think we've had enough business. Any new business that somebody wants to bring up?
I just quickly gonna mention, Carl, if anyone's interested, the region's having a stormwater management review, public information center PIC meeting on October 5th. I think it's at 6:30. It's on the region's website. It just because we have an environmental focus, anybody who's interested in the official plan review with respect to the stormwater management guidelines the region's looking at, you might want to register for that. So I'll just throw that out there. Thank you.
Sir Bothwell, what day did you say? The 5th?
I'm pretty sure it's.
I
the
can look it
5th.
up, but okay.
I've got it in my phone, I think. Yeah, it is the 5th and it's at 6:30.
Okay.
And it is on their website. They have, and I think I posted on my Facebook page. If anybody actually follows me, it's on my Councillor Dorothy Bothwell Facebook page. I posted the notice and the registration details for that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Any other new business? Okay, next meeting is October the 27th. And then I assume we have one in November. Can I ask if we have one in December? Or is it rescheduled for some other day in December?
You read my mind. I was going to raise the same and actually have my calendar up right now. So our December meeting would be December the 29th, which generally does not work for people. So it's possible to look at December the 22nd, the Wednesday before, because of the way the Wednesdays fall, that actually might work and not be a conflict with Active Grimsby, which Bruce, you and I would both otherwise be affected by, but it would actually, I think, potentially work. Do we want to look at that date so that you don't lose that whole month, or would you rather not meet in December? It just might be good to decide now as everybody starts to dive into busy schedules and before somebody else potentially claims that date. Any feedback?
I think we should keep the date because we've got a lot to do, and I think missing a whole month might be set us back a little bit.
When you say keep the date, you mean December 29th?
Yeah, sorry, keep the month. Yeah, December 20. No, sorry, keep the month. So not miss a month. So December 22nd. Yeah.
I'm good with the 22nd too. So I'd support the December meeting. And yeah, I know we want to keep moving along some of these great initiatives. So I'm good with attending in December.
I will just say I have to make sure I can get the supports we need for this meeting, but pending that, then yeah.
Bruce, are you in favor?
Sorry, my mouse was running away.
Yeah,
I've penciled it into the calendar.
Okay.
Subject to social pressures.
Okay, I would be in favor as well. Haley? Okay, so we will have the meeting on December the 22nd. Anything else? I don't think so. Can somebody move, we adjourn? Aaron, a seconder. Haley, all in favor? Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
folks.
Night, everyone.
Good night.
All right.